Can you tell me why you chose to live in Mountain Lakes eventually?
So Dad and I, we drove here. We saw the lakes and we're like, this is it. We don't want to look anywhere else.
Do you ever regret that decision now? Can you tell me your name and how many years you've lived in the US?
My name is Shuangping Shi. Immigrated in 1998, so I've been here for 26 years.
How old were you when you decided to move?
I was 24, right after graduate study of a master's degree in China. Yes, I went to college in China. I had a 3-year master program in China. My graduate master's major was molecular cell biology.
Did you already have a career in mind in America?
Yes, I formed that idea when I was in high school. My friends and I were talking about what major we want to pursue in college. One path is to go for finance and make a lot of money, stay in China. The other one is pursue a scientific major and go to US or UK to pursue higher degrees.
Your peers already planned to leave China when they decided to go to college?
Yes, STEM majors especially. Chemistry, biology, math. Because US offers the best education for STEM technologies. We heard about so many advanced technology in US, computers, cars, we cannot even imagine back in China. So it felt so unrealistic, surreal.
How about the economy in China at this time? Was that a consideration when you decided to immigrate?
My father was quite successful. He was a chemical engineer. He made $45 a month. I heard if you go to the US to pursue a study, you don't need to pay tuition because it's covered by the fellowship. You can get stipend of more than $20,000 a year. That is such a big number to me.
Like your main motivation was like economic and career-wise?
That's right.
Was it mostly for yourself, or did you also hope to send money to your family?
Both. I would think maybe my family was a more important consideration than myself. I always want to be useful to other people. If I can offer some help, offer something.
Did it make a difference that in the US, like, healthcare isn't covered? Was it covered in China?
It was covered in China. Back then, healthcare was free. That was never a consideration, to be honest. I never thought about, because we have no idea of medical insurance. Although the medical care they can offer was also very poor. But I was never ill, so that was not a consideration. I still remember when I first came here, one of my classmates from Switzerland, he said, oh, when my mom called me, he asked me about medical insurance and about all those details. I said, you're so young, why do you need an insurance? I was that ignorant.
Your parents and friends were supportive of you going to America?
Yes, everybody was very supportive. It's not easy, right? We need to take test, we need to take the graduate school entrance test, and then we need to apply, write personal essays, get interviews. So it's a process that, I don't know percentage, just making it up, maybe 1 in 100 can get the opportunity of a college offer.
How did you navigate the immigration process? Were there any challenges that you faced?
When I first came, I was not an immigrant. I was a student on a student visa. As I about to complete my study, I applied for immigration, which is the green card. I was lucky. I was very lucky. At that time, they have a accelerated process for people like me in the category of national interest, because my research is considered to benefit medical science in the US. So they issued me a special immigration visa. I applied. I got my visa 6 months after the application. But I do know some people, they need to wait for years, 10 years, more than 10 years.
How'd you come to the decision that you wanted to have citizenship here?
Near the end of grad school, we need to, have a plan. What do we want to do? If I want to look for a job, Many of the companies, they require you have the authorization to work in US. If I didn't have a green card, it's very difficult to find a job.
When you were working on sort of scientific developments for the US, did you start to feel more like patriotic for the US, or did you ever feel that you should have been working to advance China instead?
I think my work, the scientific research, really is a contribution to the entire mankind. Especially after 2000, the increased globalization, everyone in the world, not just US, not just China, anywhere, right? They benefited from my research. I feel proud I'm here, that US offer a very good environment for me to innovate, contribute to the science community. So I don't feel guilty for China either, because everyone benefited.
So the US was just a matter of like more opportunities.
More opportunities, more open, more freedom to exercise your ideas.
How did people treat you and how were you received when you first came to the US?
I went to Weill Medical College of Cornell University. Some people are very nice. I remember one secretary in the International Student Office gave me a lot of guidance as an international student. I don't know how to register for courses. I still remember her name. Her name was Adriana.
How do you pronounce it?
That's how people pronounce it. I never knew how to. Adriana. That was how I heard at that time, right? Remember, I was not fluent in English. I remember my mentor, my PhD mentor, he was a very decent, very kind professor. Talked to us students about scientific research and reading journal articles. Those were from library, right? So I would just go to the library, get it, and make a copy for myself and make a copy for him. When I presented him the copy of the paper, he said, Shuangping, you don't need to do this to me. I can make my own copy. Back in China, it's my job, right? It's my job to copy papers for the professors. Sometimes they even give me money, ask me go to the shop next door to buy a cigarette for them. As a junior person, also maybe as a female, I was being ordered around. But in US, everyone was equal.
Do you attribute that to the US? Like, do you think that's part of our culture?
That's part of the culture. It's very natural. No one thinks anyone should be more superior to others. I met some white supremacy people later, but majority of the US people has a culture of embracing diversity and think everyone is equal, everyone has equal opportunities.
How did education and culture differ in the US from in China?
US encourage questioning. China is you just download what the teacher tells you. If you question them, they get upset. Today, I'm quiet because that's how I was brought up and trained.
Would you say that was a Chinese culture thing, like traditional Chinese culture, or like a communism thing?
Traditional Chinese has that culture, but communists made it 10 times worse because traditionally we were like Chinese tends to be modest. You have to be humble to be modest, considered a virtue. After communist, if you say something, you may lose your life. So that's a difference. Being considered as a good, humble person versus being a rebellion and should be killed.
So when you came to the US, you felt that you had more freedom to just question what you were being taught?
Yes, to explore new ideas, new space.
How long did it take for you to adjust to that?
I'm still adjusting. I'm slowly adjusting. Like I said, I'm the quiet one. In a room, I ask questions only when I feel I really want to ask that question. I have to, because I'm afraid people will laugh at me or I don't have anything smart to say.
How about just like the social culture in the US? How is it different?
I don't know. We don't go to bars. There's no such a thing in China. Yeah. There's no such a thing like let's go to bars after work, and no, we don't have that. We do have friends gathering, relative gatherings during holidays. That's just normal people interactions.
How about the social scene in America? Did you participate in that at all?
Not at all. Language barrier, right?
Yeah.
So at work, I know what people are talking about. We're talking about work. After work, when they talk about basketball, celebrities, I feel so dumb. I know none of them. Maybe I do, but I just don't know the names. We translate everything in Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to, in my head, Google, who is this? Oh, yeah, I know that person, but it just sounds differently in Chinese. Once I realize the topic already passed, right? The moment passed. I'm not able to catch up.
So you kind of felt like you were socially outcast, not because people were trying to be cruel, but just because you had that barrier.
I think so.
Some people say that America has a culture of like all work, being efficient. People don't know when to relax. People don't have a space outside of work and outside of the home. Would you say that's true, or is that different from in China?
I think that's true comparing to Europe. Comparing to China, American is the one that enjoys life. Because China, they call it 996, means 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And that's normal.
Did you have more free time in the US, and how did you use it?
Oh, as a student, what did I do? We were poor. We didn't have we don't take vacation. But we live in Manhattan, so go to Central Park. 1999, Rockstar from China, he visited and he had a concert there. I remember I went. And later, Dalai Lama visited and he gave a speech in Central Park that I went. So, we went to Metropolitan Museum of Art. I like opera. Opera ticket was only $25. They were sang in Italian. No one understood. China offers none of those, right? Of course, be fair. I was also a student. I live on campus. The most I do is to go to a park, watch a movie. So in US, I had more activities in my free time.
What was the first American movie you watched?
The first American movie after I came here? Oh, Pretty Woman.
Stores are never nice to people. They're nice to credit cards. Okay. Stop fidgeting.
I thought it was Tarzan.
Tarzan?
Yeah.
Tarzan was later. Pretty Woman was in 1998. Tarzan was probably the year later.
Is the content of American movies a lot different from the ones you saw in China?
It's the story. There are more stories.
What were some American shows that you watch?
Seinfeld, that was my favorite, all-time favorite.
They didn't have roommates in the Middle Ages. How do you know?
And then I watched Friends. Everybody Loves Raymond. That was that time, 1990s. Yeah, Friends was okay. I mean, I like Seinfeld much better. Breaking Bad. That one was a good one.
What was the first American song you heard? Do you remember?
Oh, I remember there's a song, New York, New York.
Do you think if I play it for you later, you'll remember?
Yeah, if you find it. I remember, my English, I only understand New York.
What was New York like as an immigrant?
My first impression was it's dirty, old.
Worse than China?
Yes. China at that time just started to build subways, skyscrapers. Everything is brand new. When I came here, I saw the subway, 100 years old subway. It was a shock. But then later on, I realized I'll still rate New York higher than Shanghai at that time, right? Shanghai had, shining subways, but there's only one line. New York has a network. You can go anywhere you want. I realized how established the system is.
How about the people? Was it more or less diverse than you were expecting? Were there a lot of other Chinese people or immigrants in general?
In New York City, yeah. When I was in China, there were very few, foreigners. I've only seen Chinese before.
Was it after you got a job that you decided to move to the suburbs?
Yes. I got my first job in 2006. We moved to Edison.
What made you decide to move to New Jersey?
My company was based in New Jersey.
And by then you already like had a child.
Yes, I had Eric when I was in last year of graduate school.
Would you say that people in the suburbs treated you any different than people in New York?
In New York, I didn't experience any discrimination. In the suburb, sometimes I do. Could be subtle, but sometimes not so subtle. Yeah.
Are you glad you came to the East Coast instead of the West? Or like just anywhere else?
I'm glad I'm in the coastal area.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here for, let's say, so I came 1998. I stayed in East Coast until 2020. I moved to California for 2 years, and then I moved back. I like both East Coast and West Coast. Maybe West Coast better in terms of culture.
But do you think your experience as an immigrant would have been a lot different if you settled in like the Midwest or something?
I do. In one of my job, I need to establish a manufacturing facility in Idaho. I visited Idaho a few times. I wouldn't be able to live there. When I walk into a restaurant, everyone stopped eating.
Were you the only non-white person?
Staring at me. Yes, I ran away from that restaurant. But everywhere is the same. Restaurant, shops was the only non-white person.
Chinese people, before coming to the US, are they kind of aware of that regional difference? Like, do they tend to choose the coasts?
Not at all. We didn't know. I still remember I have many offers, right? College. One was in Texas, and then some people were telling me, it's the living expense in Texas is very low. You should choose Texas. I didn't choose Cornell because it's in New York. At that time, I didn't know the difference between New York and El Paso.
So you had no expectations for how differently people are treated across America?
I have no expectations. Thought it's all the same, but apparently it's not.
How about like buying a house? Was that complicated at all by you being an immigrant?
Not at all. See, that's another thing good about America. Everyone was treated equally in this perspective. You have human right, right?
Mm-hmm.
Human right. Everybody has equal right. China is different. You have we call it 户口. It's like a passport. It restricts you to where you were born. You can only live there. You can only go to school there. Unless compete and go to a college somewhere else, then you're allowed to go to college if that's not in your town. If you leave your town, you cannot buy a house, send your children to school in the other town. You have to, everybody was bound by this 户口. You're not allowed to mobilize.
Can you tell me why you chose to live in Mountain Lakes eventually?
Oh, when I was in graduate school, someone mentioned there is a town in New Jersey. It's so beautiful. It's called Mountain Lakes. Just registered in my head. And then when I started working in New Jersey and we were looking to buy a house, I used school district to rank my choices. Like, oh, this is the town people mentioned to me. Let me visit. So we drove around in town. We saw the lakes and we're like, this is it. We don't want to look anywhere else.
Do you ever regret that decision now?
I don't.
How do you feel about the way Asian people are treated here?
Some people treat it as nice, some don't. Once there was a donation party for the turf. Remember, they installed the light in the turf. It was like $2 million project, and they were asking residents to donate. Went in, and they asked me, do you live here? I didn't feel welcome. There are also a couple times in Island Beach, the police will come to me, ask whether I live here. I don't see him go asking the white people.
Do you know what nativist means? So nativist is someone who, in the example of Mountain Lakes, like people want to sort of defend the town
from invaders like me.
Do you think that's an accurate description?
Probably. My children were born here, they grew up here. I hope they're accepted as Lakers. I have choices, right? All those unpleasant experiences. One choice is sell the house and move to somewhere more diverse. Another choice is to stay and try to blend in the mainstream. I don't really care. I don't really care mainstream, this or that. I enjoy nature. I like the town. I'll choose to stay here, right? I'm a good citizen. I contribute to the town, to the community.
Did you find it pretty easy to find other Chinese people in New York?
Yes. In the suburb, not as much. We can always find each other. Even like when we live in Edison, it's a townhouse community, there were 3 Chinese families. We just managed to find each other. Mountain Lakes, there are fewer Chinese families, but I guess, and it's we just go by the kids. Whoever their friends are, we interact with the parents more. Their friend group is more based on personality and interest.
Do you feel like your kids are whitewashed?
No,
Do you think that's like a real thing? Is that like a genuine concern for you?
it's not a concern. I mean, my kids grew up here. They grew up to whoever they want to be in America, right? Everybody has the freedom to choose the lifestyle.
Do you think there's anything we missed out on by not being raised in China?
Here, you always feel you're a minority. In China, you won't feel that, right? You're the majority. Like, it's not even called majority because everybody is the same. I think you will have more courage to pursue things. It's hard to say. I mean, here, the system is very open, very, very friendly, a lot of opportunity. But the race puts certain restriction or psychological restriction on you. You always feel more or less at disadvantage. In China, you don't have the race problem, but you have the systemic issue. Everybody was treated the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was given a very small space.
Yeah.
Here, everybody was giving a lot of freedom, but your race may put you in a small space. But it's getting better. Comparing to 15, 20 years ago, in my company, 15 years ago, in the executive, it's all white. Now, we start to see Black people, Asian people.
Do you think there's significant cultural differences between China and America still?
Superficially, you would think they become more alike. Deep down the root, it's still different because it's still a closed system, right? Under communist. It's not the culture or the race, it's the political system.
They're like technically like they're not communist anymore.
I don't think their mindset have changed. Maybe because the leaders were from the communist time. They were trained, they were brought up during that time. So their style, their ideas are still communist.
Do you think the US has greater opportunities for social mobility?
Using my own example, I do. But I do hear, in some other areas, maybe Michigan or Ohio, people are struggling. They feel they don't have mobility. But that was not my experience. I start with someone with no background, no help from family or anyone, but I can achieve the social movement.
Do you believe in the American dream?
I do. I think all of us came with an American dream, and more or less we all realized our dreams.
Everyone that you know?
Everyone I know, yeah. Dream is limited because you can only dream things that you have experienced.
Yeah.
I feel coming to the US, I achieved beyond my dream. It opened up my eyes, see so many surreal things.
How about people who struggle a lot or don't end up achieving what they want here? Do you think that's like a result of individual difference or the American system failing them?
Maybe a little bit of both. American system favor those who are fearless, who are very open-minded to try things. If you don't have that kind of personality or character, it's very difficult for you to achieve, to be successful here.
You don't think there are any people who just like get unlucky?
No, I wouldn't say it's unlucky. I do think language and culture can be a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are really, really smart, much smarter than me. But if they're not fluent in English, they cannot express themselves, they're not being recognized.
Ultimately, you still think it was worth it to move here?
Oh, no doubt.
How do you think your life would be different if you hadn't?
I mean, that's a good question. All my friends are doing well in China as well because the last 20 years, China has really boomed.
Mm-hmm.
People do have a lot of opportunities as well. I feel people like me, I appreciate freedom a lot. I appreciate the freedom of speech and sharing and opening. In China, I wouldn't be able to do that. And also here, I feel as a woman, I think I got more opportunity here than if I stayed in China. So even nowadays, I go back and visit as a executive from a U.S. companies. I go back to visit the Chinese companies, for business. I feel the difference between men and women, the way they treat women. I just cannot accept that.
Mm-hmm. Something that people talk about now was how in the 90s, big way that Americans would react to racism was to be colorblind. Do you know what that means?
I don't see color.
Yeah, I don't see color, like all races are the same, whereas now people are more encouraged to like acknowledge those differences.
Yeah. I think that's some evolution, because I used to think that remark is correct. I don't see color, so that means I'm colorblind. I only see you as a person. But then I learned not too long ago, right? Only 4 years ago when I moved to California. That's where I hear a lot about diversity and inclusion. And in one of the the discussions, they mention you should recognize being colorblind doesn't mean real DNI. You should recognize the difference, acknowledge the difference. That's where I think I truly get the meaning of DNI.
You would say that in terms of race and racism, we have made progress since the 90s?
I think so, yeah. Because even 10, 15 years ago, we were not offered as much opportunities as today. Promotions, job opportunities. I still feel I was at disadvantage at that time. But now it's kind of, I'm at my advantage because look at me, I came, with nothing, and I got pretty successful with a family, with a career.
I walked around, like I went to Birchwood because I wanted to see if I could get like some videos of mountain lakes. I just ended up getting a bunch of like it wasn't good.